Greetings to everyone, friends. A very interesting draft law has been registered on the website of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, which the Verkhovna Rada will consider soon. And for some reason, I have no doubt that it will be adopted. Officially, as always, all these restrictions, controls, and so on are being justified by saying that it's for Ukraine to join the European Union. In practice, it's once again about increasing control over their own citizens so that anyone can be found. In short, in my opinion, a large number of tools that work normally in the European Union today are simply harmful for Ukraine, or rather, they are harmful for the citizens of Ukraine. Because in the European Union there is total control over how this data is used, and in the European Union there is real responsibility for the protection of personal data. In Ukraine, however, we often see that as soon as a registry is created, within 3 days it is already being sold on the dark web with all the necessary and unnecessary data. And this is a very big problem. So when new registries are created in Ukraine, when some kind of control is strengthened in Ukraine, we understand that any scoundrels can take advantage of this information. From ordinary scammers who will keep calling you, to government officials who are also just regular corrupt individuals and bandits who have simply gotten their hands on power. For example, in the case of Mindich Gate, we see that criminals can even sit in ministries and face no real responsibility for their criminal actions, just as we see now. So now we will review this bill in general so that every Ukrainian understands what awaits them in the near future. We wanted to live in the European Union, but it turned out that the restrictions will be like in the European Union, while the standard of living will be like in the poorest countries of Africa. Unfortunately, this is the reality in Ukraine today. That is why a large number of Ukrainians have already left and continue to leave, and when the borders open, even more will leave. So in Ukraine, legislative changes are being prepared aimed at joining the Single Euro Payments Area, which include updating the rules, as always, for financial monitoring. I want to remind you that somehow it turns out that as of today, Ukrainian financial monitoring, even without these reinforcements and tightening of the rules, is already quite strict. It can notice when someone receives an extra 5,000 hryvnias on their card and, for example, block a private bank account or an account in Universal Bank. But at the same time, when Mindich's company, this whole shady group, was transferring $100 million abroad, the financial monitoring didn't notice anything. So no violations were found, and then they just shrugged their shoulders. So much for the quality of financial monitoring. Yes, so we can see this level of quality. So, a draft law number 14327-1 on amendments to certain legislative acts of Ukraine has been registered on the website of the Verkhovna Rada. Regarding ensuring compliance with the acts of European Union law and the criteria of the European Payments Council in order to integrate Ukraine into the Single Euro Payments Area, we will now go over the main points it provides for, and we will also discuss each of them in more detail. So you have all the information. What does the draft law actually provide for? First of all, a transparent, competitive procedure for appointing the head of the State Financial Monitoring Service of Ukraine. This point is actually a positive one. But again, I would like the people who are chosen, even on a competitive basis, to be subject to some kind of oversight. Because we've seen more than once that even when someone is chosen transparently, things can still go wrong. And then they make an offer that the person can't refuse, and that person also ends up, let's say, on the path of corruption. Although it's much better than when the cabinet or the Verkhovna Rada just appoints someone based on some backroom deals. Yes, because the risk of nepotism is much higher otherwise. The competition process seems more stable, which is a plus. Second, the creation of a registry of accounts and individual bank safes for individuals. Actually, this change was promised to us a little earlier. Let me remind you that this registry is supposed to be managed by the State Tax Service of Ukraine, And they also said that no, they will not have direct access to how much is in anyone's accounts, how much money there is. But again, after this is introduced, after this registry is created, only one small vote will be needed. About opening the information, for example, to certain divisions of the tax service so that they can monitor how much money is in everyone's accounts under the pretext of detecting some illegal funds. The deputies will pass this, of course. Strengthening control, pressure on civil society. This is always good for those who are in power. And since elections are not planned for now, strengthening this control, fines and punishments are the tools that are most commonly used in any new initiatives in Ukraine today. Third, the creation of a register of ultimate beneficial owners, trusts, and other similar legal entities, including a data verification mechanism. Well, this is probably about the register of those who have a bit more money than the average Ukrainian. But this is also about increasing control. And from Europe's point of view, this is very good because it allows you to track various corruption schemes. You can see who is moving money where and how. But again, if this system is managed by someone, for example, if some corrupt group is in charge, how will they use it? Exactly. They will hunt those who have money and who are outside this system. Just to take that money, take the businesses and so on, that's how it would work. And this, for example, works in Europe to effectively detect some violations. But in Ukraine, it could be another tool for hunting honest money, which can be taken away, confiscated, arrested, and so on under some pretext. Fourth, expanding the list of primary financial monitoring entities, including dealers in cultural valuables and trustees of trusts. This refers to what we discussed earlier. Next, strengthening whistleblower protection measures and improving the sanctions regime for violations of financial monitoring legislation. So, we see that in fact no one can really offer anything new. Then they talk about restrictions, fines, punishments, and so on. So we see that with every law, with every draft law that is submitted, the only thing that the current government, the current Verkhovna Rada can offer today is the same monomajority that, I don't know how they're still hanging on, but they are. All they can offer is fines, punishment, restrictions, control, that's all. So at some point, Ukrainian society took a wrong turn, and now we're just reaping the consequences. The results of the choice made. Yes, go on. In particular, the provisions of the bill do not impose any restrictions or delays on financial transactions by individuals. Yes, but again, control. They will all be under stricter control in this operation. Yes, in the explanatory note. That's my favorite part of all this. It says that the purpose of the bill is to bring Ukrainian legislation in the field of financial monitoring in line with the requirements of the European Union and international standards for combating money laundering and the financing of terrorism. This is necessary so that Ukraine can apply to join the Single Euro Payments Area, and meet the criteria set by the European Payments Council. You know, passing something like this during martial law is probably the same as passing a law on multiple citizenships. And if you look at the situation logically and reasonably, these are exactly the laws that are being talked about. It's not the right time, because for some reason it's the right time for us to pass the law on multiple citizenships. Change the name of the Kopek to Shah, but now isn't the right time for us. For example, to properly regulate the issue of mobilization, to punish those guilty of violating the criminal code and human rights, to punish the corrupt and punish them effectively, not so that they get out on bail for a few hryvnias and live on other stolen money. Because for some reason, this is not the right time for us. It's not the right time for us to carry out military reform. It's not the right time for us to hold elections. Letting new people into the government, it's not the right time for us, but it's the right time for us to adopt something like this. Why? Because what is being adopted now is meant to introduce additional sanctions, additional fines, additional restrictions, and additional control. That's what we need to start from. So, in my opinion. We need to keep a very close eye on this, and just look at those high-profile bills that have been passed, for example, in the last 2 years in Ukraine. Out of all of them, the most large-scale ones are those bills or some government decrees that are meant to restrict someone, to prohibit something for someone, to force someone to come somewhere again, one more unnecessary time. Only corruption risks are being created, restrictions are being imposed on the citizens of Ukraine, and so on. Martial law in Ukraine is being used as cover, but here we see nothing is actually being concealed. And they just say, let's join the European Union as soon as possible. Although we understand that today Ukraine is much further from the European Union than it was, for example, in 2019. That might just be my opinion. What do you think? Write in the comments, be sure to subscribe to my channel, share this video with your friends, acquaintances, and family. I wish you all a great day. See you next time.